Okay, thank you so much. So thank you, Ubaid, for the welcoming housekeeping rules. With this, Assalamu alaikum and welcome to all the participants, all the esteemed panelists to this series of public-private dialogues we are doing under our project on clean energy transition of Pakistan. And I think the topic we are discussing today is close to my heart, as well as the economic priority of Pakistan at this moment, where we are looking into the prospects and challenges of Thar coal field. And as the title mentions, that it's looking into the socio-economic side of the development, and also looking into what kind of challenges we have, and how could we overcome these challenges. So we have right set of stakeholders coming from all backgrounds, and probably will be having an insight from all the perspective that is to be noted for our research. Just to give a little background of the project, this is a project led by supported by European Climate Foundation and STPI executing it in Pakistan with their support in terms of how we could promote renewable energy investments in CPEC. So Thar being a major hub in the energy projects of Thar coal, I think it becomes plays a critical and a vital role. And how do we foresee the prospects of developing Thar coal field? How do we see under the umbrella of climate change, meeting the targets and the goals of SDGs? How do we see the development happening over there? How it's contributing to the socio-economic prosperity of the region, but how can we not ignore the ecological footprint associated to it? So all these discussions, I think that are very relevant to today's topic. And as we are all know about the background of the Tharparkar region, where the Thar coal field is being developed, is one of the most underdeveloped areas and marks the lowest human development index. And however, in recent years, with the discovery of Thar coal field, having a huge 185 billion reserves of Thar coal, has been a game changer for the not only to the policymakers but also for the socioeconomic uplift. And as me myself has witnessed, and also a lot of other people have witnessed, the development happening in Thar coal, giving lots of employment opportunities, business opportunities, health, education, infrastructure, access to energy services. And on the national scale, it is envisioned to provide cheap electricity and our reliance in overcoming the reliance on the imported fuel. So like I said in the beginning, that it is an economic priority of Pakistan and lies under the priority of CPEC. We are expecting, and also we are witnessing some of the developments happening to the prosperity of local, regional, and national development. However, there are strong public concerns about the impact of coal mining on ecology of the region, especially the water resources, especially the livelihood, the associated livelihoods of the people on the agricultural land, on the cultural values of the region. So these as we have, you must have also identified that there are the communities who had been living under the conditions, whose livelihoods have been dependent on those resources. And the livelihoods means their dependence on the agriculture as well as on on the grazing their goats and their sheep and all those livestock. So the region having high levels of poverty and all, and just having those sources, it remained critical in the beginning that how these projects will ensure their uplift, and that's we do witness in the projects. But again, as with this forum, we would also like to come up with some talk about the how to overcome and mitigate the environmental and the ecological aspects of the impacts on the region. So considering the emissions and also the international community and the international commitments Pakistan have, the Prime Minister of Pakistan had just taken this voice and announced the abandoning of coal power plants in the recent climate summit happened in December 2020. So as per the announcement, as the government of Pakistan will not approve any coal-based power plant, also looking into the intent to mine coal to convert it into gas and liquid, which can be used as transport fuel and methane gas for power generation. This again raises a concern, as the studies have highlighted, that the feasibility, not just the economical, but also environmental, does not really support these technologies as well. So there are wider concerns about the coal mining and its related climate impacts. So this strongly calls for a need to analyze that the investments that we are having under CPEC, and China having taken this broader initiative of greening their investments along BRI, and CPEC being the flagship project. I think it's very important to understand how China is going to foresee its investments coming in now, especially supporting the government's new alternative renewable energy policy, where the government is envisioned to have 30% solar and wind by 2030 and 30% hydro, which our Prime Minister calls it as 60% renewable energy in our energy mix by 2030. And this is for some it's ambitious, but for some of the people, I think it does come with an opportunity for investors and also for the relevant stakeholders to really come into the play, and also look into developing the business priorities along those lines. So with this, I think without any further ado, I would just like to go on to the main objectives of this this webinar, the public-private dialogue, and I'll just quickly go on to introduce the esteemed panelists who have joined us for discussion today. So the key objectives are we aim to build capacity with the relevant stakeholders on identifying the socioeconomic and the environmental impacts of coal development. We are also looking into analyzing the prospects and implications of abandoning coal and also looking into CTG, coal to gas and coal to liquid, and how these transition strategies and policies would enable the community to play an active role from this transformation, including infrastructure, employment, and local value creation. And also we are going to look at whether we are going to overcome our energy and electricity crisis that have been longing and have been a hanging fruit for Pakistan for long. So this was all about it, and I think the panelists were also provided with the concept note to actually look at it and provide their perspective. Also to highlight that the discussion we will have today, as it will be available online and it's being live now, but the inputs from all these stakeholders will be embedded in our policy paper, on clean energy transition in Pakistan, which will be launched in our final meeting next month. And we shall be engaging you for the next processes as well. So with this, I'm very, very thankful on the behalf of STPI to support us in this project, and also helping us towards supporting the decision maker and policy makers for a clean energy pathway along the country's priorities. So with this, I think I'll just go on to just introduce our panelists who have joined us today. The first one we have is Mr. Shamsuddin Sheikh. He's a CEO of Natural Resources and a former CEO, a pioneer of Sindh Engro Coal Mining Company, a joint venture between the Sindh government and Engro Corporation. He will be joining us in between 11:30 to 12. So we'll be bringing him in between those, in between the time slot he has made himself available to shed light on the forum. The second we have is Ms. Amina Ansari. She's a manager consultancy at Bridge Factor, Corporate Finance and Business Strategy. Then we have Mr. Simon Nicholas. He's an energy expert from Institute for Energy Economics and Financial Analysis. He had worked on several studies related to third coal field in Pakistan, which I'll be elaborating more on while inviting him for the discussion. Then we have Ms. Haneea Isaad. She's a research associate at Rural Development Policy Institute. Mr. Ali Nawaz Bhan, he's a Director General Coal at Private Power and Infrastructure Board, PPIB. Then we're also joined by Mr. Faisal Sharif Wattu, Director Project Appraisals, PPIB. Then we are also joined by Mr. Yasir Khokhar. He's a Director Finance, Public-Private Partnership Unit, Sindh. Mr. Imran Sabir, he's a Director, Regional Office, Karachi, Sindh Environmental Protection Agency, SEPA. Then Ms. Sabina Khurram Jaf, Senior Joint Director, State Bank of Pakistan. I hope that I've not missed out any of our honorable speakers for today's session. And I'll just quickly would like to invite our first speaker, Ms. Amina Ansari, a manager consultancy from Bridge Factor, to have her perspective in the first round. Just to also, I forgot to mention earlier that as this is the first round, we would encourage an intervention for 5 minutes each. And in the second round, we'll be having questions for the panelists from our side that we have prepared us, and also from the audience. So Ms. Amina, it's over to you for your intervention.
Hi, hello everybody. Thank you, Haneea, and thank you for inviting all of us to this forum. And developments in third coal are very important from a socio-economic perspective. And it's great to have people like Yasir, Ali Nawaz, Haneea, yourself, everybody on board here. So yes, whilst coal is perceived to be, a dirty fuel, and there's a moratorium on production of energy through coal. I mean, such things are under discussion. Energy security is very important, and I do feel from an economic perspective and foreign exchange, reliance on indigenous fuels is highly important. One question that I would generally like to know from whoever is relevant on this forum is, what is the plan for coal to gas, conversion? Does it require a lot of fresh water? How is the pipeline going to be laid? I really want to understand what is happening so far as the project development is concerned, and how are we tackling the issues should fresh water be required for this purpose? What is the overall plan? because yes, the feedstock is available, mining activities are, they're working on full speed. There's a lot of development in Thar. I recently visited as well because we advise a lot of government of Sindh projects. So yeah, that's what I want to know from this forum, that what is the plan as far as water requirement is concerned for such projects.
Thank you, Amina. And I think we are joined by our colleagues from PPIB, and also we have some independent consultants who have, like Simon and Haneea, who have recently done a study on CTG and C2L, coal to liquid. So I think they will be elaborating more on that. But I think I'll just would like to go on and invite our colleague from PPIB, Director General Coal, Mr. Ali Nawaz. Sir, if you're with us, and if I could ask that if is third coal a solution to Pakistan's long-term energy woes,
Yes.
and would like to elaborate more on it?
Thank you, madam. Generally, the Pakistan's energy security lies with the third coal. I definitely support this because we have to rely on third coal being our indigenous resource, and for energy self-sufficiency, we need to rely on the third coal, because if we go for the renewable energy, for solar, for wind, for hydro, these all are not reliable resources, because their availability is around 50%, even less than 50%, 40% and 50%, because we need every time base load power plants. We need electricity all the time, 24 hours a day. That's why we need base load power plants. For base load power plants, we need to develop either nuclear power plants or rely on coal or liquid fuels. For liquid fuels, we almost import it, and it drains out all the foreign exchange of the country. Just to save our foreign exchange, we have to rely on the third coal, and we depend on the third coal. Third is available with us since last 4 decades, but unfortunately we could not exploit it, and we could not get any benefit from it since last 2-3 years. We have engaged third coal mining, and Block 2 has been developed. And now what we are doing, we are switching to the safe and reliable technology to save our environment. For that purpose, we have introduced 2 coal power plants based on supercritical technology. They have very low emissions and low sulfur oxides emissions, as well as carbon emissions. Those projects are Shanghai Electric's 1320 megawatt and Lucky Electric power plant, that is 660 megawatt. For the very initial stage, we engaged 3 power plants: Engro, Thar Energy, and Thalnova Power Limited, based on supercritical. But now we are switching to supercritical technology with the latest gadgets to save our environment. Since last 4 decades, I'm also resident of the Sindh area. What I have seen, in 1980s, we used to travel from Karachi to Thar. It consumes almost our 18 hours. But now coastal highway has been developed, and we normally reaches at Thar within 3 to 4 hours from Karachi. Again, with the development of Thar, the whole scenario of Thar has been changed. The transport is available there now by the coastal highways, road project developed by the government of Sindh. Again, universities, schools, and hospitals has been developed over there, and a lot of employment opportunities has been created over there, and almost all walks of the life has been engaged. Even the females of the Thar, which never been imagined that they will drive cars and trucks, but now female truck drivers are there. They are very much visible over there. And above all, 1 million tree plantation over there is in process, and more than 0.7 million trees has been planted over there. Not only this, but by the development of Thar coal, the Thar people are they have access to drinking water, which has never been there envisaged in the past. Above all, we have developed a biosaline agriculture industry, and now agriculture is there, and food and eatable items are being grown over there. Above all, fisheries, which were never thought before that fishes would be available in the desert. But now aquaculture has been developed and the wastewater is being utilized for the fishing purposes. Village improvement plans has been there, and the latest living conditions of the nearby villages has been improved a lot. Furthermore, regarding the environment, I would say that all these projects, coal power projects, either it is CTL, coal to liquid, or coal to gas, are subject to environmental approval of the concerned agency. Before the approval of concerned agency, we cannot move forward. So all these projects, before their kickstart, we get the approval from the relevant environmental agencies. No new project is being started without their approvals. Regarding IGSEP, which the last version says that from 2024 onwards, normally the imported coal projects dispatch is reducing a little bit, but the thermal coal power projects dispatch is being increased even more than 75% because of economic considerations. It provides a huge saving in foreign exchange, provides cheaper electricity, and it is a move towards the self-sufficiency and value addition. It creates employment opportunities as well as the cheapest base load power plant. Regarding conversion on coal to liquid and coal to gas, normally it consumes more fresh water than the conventional steam power generation plants, coal power generation plants. But we are in a process, even Ministry of Energy, Petroleum Division is in a process to conduct a feasibility study, and they are in a process to develop policy regarding conversion of coal to liquid and gas. But the preliminary finding says that the water consumption is higher than the coal power generation. However, these effects can be established by the complete conduct of feasibility study. Once the numbers will be available, then we can provide an authentic number that how much water would be required for coal to liquid and coal to gas, and how much number is required for the coal power generation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. I think very interesting to understand the policies and the measures being to be taken by the government on the environmental footprints and also the use of super technology in those plants. With this, I think it would be quite relevant to move on to Mr. Imran Sabir from SEPA, Sindh Environmental Protection Agency, to if he could link his intervention to how does SEPA ensure this monitoring and compliance to these standards, to the international standards, to avoid the hazards related to the ecological side as well as the socio-economic impact on the communities. So over to you, Mr. Imran. I think, sir, please let me know if you're unable to.
Ma'am, we'll get in touch with him and maybe we can move on to Mr. Faisal.
Yeah. Okay, probably with some, I can see him though, but I think could be some technical issue, but he's unmuted now. Imran, could you hear us?
Yes, I hear you.
Yes. So, yeah, we would like to give you floor for the intervention, please.
Thank you. Thank you. Sindh EPA, right from the beginning, is on board in third coal development project. We are two-way direction we are moving. Firstly, for the infrastructure project, which was developed by the government of Sindh, we have conducted environmental impact assessment for all the projects, like the water pipelines and other projects, infrastructure, road project. We are on the board and we have conducted environmental impact assessment. Likewise, all the blocks like block 2, block 1, block 6, we all conducted environmental impact assessment. And certainly we have given with the approval for certain guideline as well. And as the project is on ground now, they are complied all the project. And as the topic is the socio-economic impact, yes, very much I strongly believe that the project enhance or develop the good economic impact on the 30 peoples, like they develop, as Ali Nawaz Saab says, all the contractor and all the employment, mostly the employment they have given to the 30 pupils. One of the things which is close my heart is that the ladies, which are not working in this area, they are on the board. Like they have now the vehicles, dumper like dumper, they are the drivers, and other work as well they are working. Also, one of the thing is that the garments which was the specialty, Thar Foundation working with them, and their business is promoted now. My belief is that this project is very much developing the socio-economic impact of the 30 people. And third coal field, all the project is on the time. Mining activity, we have developed mining activity for before our target 6 months. We have mine develop, and the coal which we produce 6 months earlier with the targeted line. And other thing is that the power project from the day first, they are in the national transmission line, and they are on Angro done with a great job in this context. Also the mining water, they have developed a Grano dam, and as Ali Nawaz says, they have also developed the dam and they produce fishes as well. We have tested a very tasty fish we have seen there, and we have at this fish as well. And the good thing is that we in this season, in the winter season, we have also observed migratory bird as well there. Few migratory bird with the Siberian comes from Siberian side. We have seen in the third field as well. So this is a good indication. And last 2 or 3 years we have seen the raining pattern, a good rain we have seen in the third. So God also bless on us that now the third is growing. Another good thing which we have seen there, around 7 lakh plantation was done, as these trees are now on the mature state. And one of the biggest thing is I don't know it's a tree like in which a bear was produced, and 125 kg bear were produced in this year. So this is a good sign. All of the good sign. As I said, biosaline farming are there, and also as one of the condition, we are go for the alternative energy. Third coal field, block 2 field also produce 10 megawatt from solar, and we have some recreation site as well there for the children who comes there. So recreation site also developed there for school children. So this is a good sign, and we have visited 2 times in the year as our condition of the simple our condition in SIPA approval, and we observe all the regulatory requirement as well as the socio-economic development as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I think it's very important to highlight that all these work that also me, myself, and a lot of others have also witnessed in Block 2. What we are really aiming to understand is the prospect of the same kind of mitigations and the same kind of measures to be taken for the development of other blocks, the 11 other blocks that are planned, and along which I think Block 6 has already started the feasibility. Considering Block 1, we had also visited in our field visit, and we could not really identify the similar kind of interventions happening as compared to the Block 2. But here I would just like to ensure, and probably I would like to link this question to our next panelist, Mr. Faisal Sharif, Director Project Appraisals from PPIB, to shed light on this aspect, and also which indicators of environmental and social side are included in the project appraisals in the energy sector and also in the third coal. And also I would like to understand, as the last speaker have mentioned about the development of renewable, the prospect, the potential of renewable in third coal field. So how do you see the prospect of diverting the investments from generating the power from coal to solely look into how we could harness the potential for solar, let's suppose, in that field or in that region, considering the higher potential. So with this, Mr. Faisal, if you could please unmute yourself, and kindly, if your bandwidth allows, if you could have your camera switched on. Yes, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, and thank you for inviting us on this dialogue. I think it'll be very useful to start dialogue on between public and private stakeholders on development and sustainability of third coal field in comparison to clean and renewable energy development. I think Ali Nawaz has very comprehensively covered the coal development side, the socio-economic benefits, and the environment side of third coal field. So I may like to give some overview in perspective of global policies and global transition towards low carbon economy of many developed and developing countries. So I think that transition towards low carbon economy is a challenging task even for developed countries. But particularly for developing countries like Pakistan, there are many peculiar sectoral and economical issues. So we have to draw a balance between the environment and the energy needs. On one hand, we have to save the environment, but on the other hand, we need energy. We are amongst the lowest per capita electricity consuming country in the region. And on the other hand, we are also the lowest per capita carbon emitting country in the region. So we have just 0.98 per metric ton of carbon emissions in comparison to, which is multiple times lower than the other neighboring country and other developed countries. So I think environment emissions are not very much concerned for at the moment for Pakistan. And despite of these low carbon emissions, we have very renewable friendly and clean energy friendly policies announced by the government of Pakistan with 30% shares of wind and solar, and even if we include hydro, that will be 60%. So 60% share of clean energy by 2030. I think it's a very significant share, and that shows that how much we are concerned towards environment. From last report of IGCEP, which is an indicative generation capacity expansion plan, though it was a draft report, it's not approved or finalized yet, but that shows that we have per capita consumption of around, carbon emissions from power generation is 400 gram per kWh, which is even lower than the world average. So that is an encouraging task, and with the development of renewable wind and solar and hydro during next 10 years, we are expecting to have these carbon emissions in the range of 200 and 250 gram per kWh. So I think the international environment community must appreciate Pakistan for its environment friendly policies in power generation and in other areas. Secondly, as other panelists and Ali Nawaz said, that we need a very reliable power generation for to meet our base load requirements, and for that, coal is one of the best and reliable fuel for generating power generation 24/7 in a day. So the issue is that we have to look at first, we are moving toward indigenization, that we are moving towards indigenous coal like Thar, and other clean sources like hydro and wind, and we have to move away from imported fuels. So the purpose is to save the foreign exchange on one hand and to save the environment on other hand. So instead of blindly following the renewable energy, we have to draw a balance, and that balance should be backed by certain analytical work, certain studies, certain reports like integrated energy planning or least cost generation planning being prepared by NTDC. So based on those numbers, based on that optimization, we may decide the future share of energy mix of Pakistan. So on one hand, we have to meet the sustainable development goals of United Nations to meet 100% energy of our people in clean and modern ways. And on the other hand, we are committed to meet the environment requirements in the Paris agreements. So all these plants which have been commissioned and which are in operations have been commissioned in compliance with the international environmental standards, and they have all the technological interventions, and they have all the environmental measures to meet the international environmental standards. So based on these figures and based on our future policies, which are very much tilted towards renewable and green energy, Pakistan as a country, I think, is in right direction. Though we started late the development of coal, the world had already developed the coal, and they have attained most of their progress through the energy generated by coal. Though we were late, but now I think we are on track. We have just 12% share of coal in our energy mix, which is not a big share. And in terms of percentage share of coal, in terms of percentage, in terms of per capita consumption, in terms of per capita carbon emissions, we are in safe zone, and we are taking all the measures to reduce it further during next 10 years. So we have to trade off between the energy needs to increase energy per capita energy consumption and to control or to mitigate the environmental impacts. On the other hand, we need a big investments based on last draft of IGSF, which has been revised now. But we need $70 billion $70 billion NPV investments in terms of capex and opex for new power generation and related infrastructure developments. So that's a big investment. So we have to explore all the options, and we need to move toward indigenization. May that include coal, may that include renewable energy, but with a balanced and with a rationalized energy mix. So I think that's all from my side. If anyone have questions, I'll be available to respond to those questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. I think we would like to understand more on whether how much we have been able to overcome our reliance on the imported fuel, and how do we see happening it in the future, like in terms of government plans and ambitions. I think I would like to move on to a question to calling Ms. Sabina Khurram, Senior Joint Director from State Bank of Pakistan. and try to ask her.
Ma'am, Miss Sabina hasn't joined yet. She's
Okay.
on her way. So maybe we can shift to the next panelist, please.
Okay, sure. All right. So I think I would like to give a floor to Mr. Yasir Khokhar now. He's a Director of Finance, PPU, Public-Private Unit Sindh, to shed light on if using coal can, as a power, can make an economic sense for Pakistan, and how does he see these projects in the partnership happening in Thar coal field.
Well, thank you, Hina. Thank you, everyone, and thank you for having me from the Public-Private Partnership Unit, Government of Sindh. You see, we have been developing projects. We have not done a project yet for directly power generation, but we have been working on the infrastructure side of the power generation. We've done our first project that is to supply water to Block 1. The government of Sindh, after development of Block 2, is working on the Block 1 right now. So we have been supplying infrastructure for provision of water to Block 1 power plants, Sangha Electric being one of them. Sadiq Sanjif online would be another one. You see, the discussion here revolves around, has this been economically beneficial for the locals of the area? I strongly believe that this development that is taking place in Thar might have taken like 10 years. The development of the local people over there, it's equal to the last 50 years that we have done over there. In the last 10 years, they've actually developed a lot. There have been modern villages, there have been infrastructure that's laid down, the connectivity has improved, the provision of services essential like health has improved. We're working on the water side as well. So, like all the panelists, I also am of the same idea that we need to focus on two factors. A is the provision of electricity through a sustainable source, and B, it must be indigenous in the first place. Every year you have huge outflow of foreign exchange reserves getting out of the country, and we have not been able to hold off any indigenous source. For the first time after putting in like 10, 12 years, in an effort to develop Thar coal, we finally have a window, an opportunity, where we can see that we can develop our power mix and tilt it towards indigenous source. So the focus should be on the indigenous source. The environmental concern that we have seen is, to an extent, offset by the critical technology introduced in the power plants. And secondly, I think as a country, we still are quite low on the list of the carbon emitting countries. So while we can have this planning and discussion ahead of the situation where we go up on that list, but the focus should be on sustainability of the energy mix and through an indigenous source. On the public-private partnership side, Sindh government has established this water conveyance system that I was talking about. So through this provision, with each project, the local gets employed. With each project, the health facilities over there improve. The communication system over there improves. The connectivity over there improves. So the whole region is quite dependent. At times, I remember this was considered to be one of the most backward areas in the country, but right now the infrastructure is as good as there is in the cities. So we are developing that infrastructure continuously, and it is quite essential that the Thar coal fields are developed to its maximum potential, and the first beneficiaries of this development are going to be the people in the area. The focus on the environment should not be taken off. We need to be concerned about the environmental concerns and improve upon it, introduce more technologies, gasification. There's no harm in exploring the gasification option for the coal as well. But despite that, I strongly believe that we need to go for the sustainability of power, for its indigenous characteristic. And third, the development of local people is linked with the development of Thar coal fields. That would be for me.
Dr. Haneea, you're muted.
Sorry. So I think, thank you, Yasir, for these interventions. I think I would just like to move on to Ms. Sabina from SPP, who has just joined us in terms of how the coal can make economic sense for Pakistan, and how does she see having a great positive economic impact on the country's development and situation. So Ms. Sabina, could you please unmute yourself? Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Haneea. So I will agree with the views represented by Yasir Saab. So I think the country needs to move towards cheaper resources for power generation, and this will help us for reducing the strain on manners of payment. As we know that the bill for power and the fuel products bill has a very large claim on our external resources. Yes, it is a very good development. However, at the same time, I think we have to take the environmental issues. We should give a more, a deep consideration to these issues, because at the moment, a number of the countries of the world who were initially moving towards power generation through coal, they have basically moved back from this resource. They have stopped using this resource. And we know about China's experience in using coal as power generation. So these issues are very serious, and they have, they will further magnify in the medium term, in the long term. So we have to consider all these things before giving it a very serious look. And I know that we have already started a number of the projects, and some of the projects are completed. The other concern is that what is the quality of the coal which is available in third? So will we be able to use that coal as this is in the present form, or will it use some further processing? And what will be the cost of that further processing? And is it comparable? And will it still remain a cheaper source after that? Whatever processing it needs. So that was my second concern. And yes, if these two things are, already in the perspective, and already the policymakers are thinking about the solutions to these two issues, then obviously there is no second, thinking about this, that we should move toward cheaper power resources. So that is all what I wanted to contribute on my side. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Sabina. With this, I would like to invite Mr. Simon Nicholas, an energy expert from Institute for Energy Economics and Financial Analysis. He has worked on some of the aspects related to Thar coal, Pakistan, and the unsustainable capacity payments. So in terms of that, and also some other recent work that you have been doing in this regard, especially also with regards to coal to gas and coal to liquid feasibility, I think we would be really interested to understand, since you also work for the other countries as well, that what insights could be developed based on your work that can assist the government in terms of identifying the challenges associated with the development of coal, and what could be the key steps that you should think that the country should take to achieve the goal of the target of renewable energy empowerment and upscaling in Pakistan. So, Simon,
Sure.
are you with us? Yeah.
Yes, thanks, Haneea, and thanks for this opportunity to speak with you all today. So I'd just like to begin by responding to an earlier comment. The idea that supercritical plants are low emissions, that's not correct. They're high emissions. It doesn't matter whether the technology is supercritical or even ultra supercritical. Coal-fired power is always high emissions. But I actually don't want to focus on carbon emissions. Pakistan is not responsible for the climate change dilemma we're in. But sort of my point is that even if you leave carbon emissions aside, that coal-fired power and coal to liquids and coal to gas technologies are not economically or financially feasible in 21st century, given the fast rate of energy technology change. We've already seen that the addition of coal-fired power has been responsible for increasing capacity payments, which is leading to the prospect of significantly higher power tariffs. The unaffordable nature of coal-fired power under CPEC has led Pakistan also to the government to seek debt relief from China. And so it's not surprising, really, that there is this plan, this moratorium on new coal power development and a plan to possibly convert existing plants using imported coal towards domestic coal use. Certainly, Pakistan has overcapacity in thermal power, which means that the coal power moratorium, that can be absorbed. In terms of converting coal plants to use domestic coal, there'll be some technical and logistical questions over how possible that is, although Pakistan is incentivized clearly to make it happen in order to try and reduce the cost of power generation. But I think there is a key question here, and that is, will the cost of domestic coal be low enough to bring down the cost of power generation? Because the current cost of domestic coal in Pakistan is relatively high compared to other countries. I'm a firm believer that Pakistan should not shift focus from coal-fired power towards coal to liquids and coal to gas. It's not economically or financially feasible. So first of all, such plans would immediately be challenged by the relatively high cost of coal production in Pakistan, as I just noted, and it would also involve even further reliance on debt from China. And then if we look overseas, the global experience of coal to liquids and coal to gas processes ought to be a significant warning that there is no bright future for such projects in Pakistan. So for instance, in the US, there was the Kemper coal to gas power project, which attempted to gasify lignite coal that is not dissimilar to that found at Tur. That proved to be a highly expensive failure, despite significant US government subsidy it received. And power consumers now unfortunately have to pick up a $1 billion bill via increased tariffs. And another key point was there was also much higher than anticipated water usage during the coal gasification process. And such very high water use makes the technology unviable in water-stressed places. In Indonesia, there is a new project proposed to convert coal into dimethyl ether, which can be used to replace LPG imports. That looks set to lose hundreds of millions of dollars on an annual basis, despite a government subsidy and a much lower cost of coal production than Pakistan. And then meanwhile, if we look at Sasol of South Africa, which has a world-leading position in coal to liquids, its position is also based on subsidies, both historic and current. But it's increasingly clear now that Sasol's current business model, using coal as a feedstock, is no longer fit for purpose, given global investor and stakeholder expectations on action on carbon emissions and a declining long-term outlook for oil demand, thanks to the rate of change of technology in the energy sector. And so Sasol is now targeting a replacement of coal feedstock with gas in the medium term and shifting to green hydrogen in the long term. So it would seem that Sasol, the world-leading coal to liquids player, is seeking to move away from coal as a feedstock. I would suggest it's not a great time for Pakistan to be increasing fossil fuel dependence along with the subsidies needed to support their consumption. I would suggest that a better plan, certainly in the power sector, would be to focus on grid investment to make better use of existing capacity. And that could also, improved grid could also allow for more cheap wind and solar and help reduce grid losses. That should be a key focus for Pakistan. Renewables, if we're talking about energy security, wind and solar certainly give better energy security. and are also cheaper than coal. The idea that we need baseload power is an outdated concept. Pakistan, like all countries, needs to be trying to transform to a lowest possible cost power generation system. So that's one based on ever cheaper wind and solar, supported by peaking power plants. So that could be hydro or gas, or battery storage is the latest technology that's sweeping across the world. This idea that renewable energy is not reliable, I don't like that term. I don't think that's correct. Wind and solar are certainly intermittent, that's fair, but I don't think it's unreliable. So I'm here in Australia. We have a state here, South Australia, which is already in 2021 close to 70, 80 or 90% dependent on renewable energy on a daily basis. It's not correct to say that renewables are unreliable. And meanwhile, just this week, we had a coal-fired power station here in Australia, which suffered an explosion and a fire, was knocked offline and put tens of thousands of people into a blackout, which is not great for the economy, of course. So I think there is an opportunity to reorient CPEC from coal to renewables. China is, of course, a global renewable energy leader. It leads in solar and wind and batteries, and there's a huge opportunity there for Pakistan. So, in summary, I think Pakistan needs to be preparing for the technologies of the future, like battery storage, electric vehicles, hydrogen, rather than subsidizing the technologies of the past. And I think I'll leave it for now.
Thank you so much, Simon, for these insights. Moving on, I think linking again to the proposed coal to gas and the coal to liquid interventions for Pakistan, I would like to give a floor to Ms. Haneea Isaad. She's a research associate at RDPI and recently been studying on the feasibility of these proposed solutions for Pakistan. And I would just like to understand that how does she understand, and she has found out through her study and through her research that whether these two, C2G and C2L, would really help resolving the increasing production costs, subsidies, capacity payments, circular debt for Pakistan's power sector. So over to you, Haneea.
Thank you, Dr. Hina. And thank you, Simon, for highlighting those points about the economic and environmental infeasibility of coal to liquids and coal to gas technologies all over the world. That gives me sort of the perfect segue to raise questions about the technology being explored in Pakistan. So as we've already discussed, the government is exploring plans for coal liquefaction and gasification based on coal extracted from Thar. Now, Thar is one of the most impoverished regions in the country and is also very, very water scarce. The mining expeditions that are currently underway in Thar have already led to a myriad of social problems due to displacement and an unfair land acquisition regime. There have been compensation issues, encroachment of grazing lands, restricted mobilization for the locals, as well as threats of groundwater pollution. So a move towards coal to liquids and gas would certainly exacerbate these problems because setting up these power plants would require coal mining on an even larger scale. So we can only assume that these problems will increase. In addition, the environmental impacts of such a move can also be very significant. Coal to liquids and coal to gas technologies have almost twice as much emissions as conventional coal-based power generation or a conventional petroleum-based transportation sector. When it comes to water, I remember there was a question in the beginning from Ms. Amina about the water usage of these power plants. So coal liquefaction requires almost 5 to 7 barrels of water per barrel of product. So the product can be diesel or dimethyl ether or anything, any chemical that will be extracted out of coal. And this is almost 3 times more than the water consumption of a conventional oil refinery. the wastewater that is produced out of these processes is also very high. It is said that it can be 13 times as high as the wastewater production from a conventional oil refinery. And the same holds true of carbon dioxide emissions as well, which can be twice as high when using coal of a derived fuel in comparison to conventional gasoline or diesel for, let's say, the transportation sector or the power generation sector, which I'm assuming are the sort of the two destinations for where the fuel produced from coal to liquids and coal to gas technologies will be utilized. So we can see that these technologies will have significant environmental impacts for the Thar region, which is already very, very impoverished. And the recent coal developments in the region have not sort of uplifted that area, a lot, to be honest. And then moving on to the economic costs of these technologies. These technologies are very costly. Setting up such a power plant would require billions of dollars in investment. And given the cost of coal in Pakistan, which is around $60 per ton or even higher than that, and a literature review of figures from existing coal to liquid technologies and coal to gas technologies in China and around the world, the production costs of producing fuel from coal to liquids or coal to gas technologies can be somewhere around $70 to $100 per ton of fuel, which is not competitive with international crude oil prices. And since the output of these technologies are mainly destined for the fertilizer, the transportation sector, or the power generation sector, the commodity prices from these sectors will ultimately go high, and the economic burden would certainly fall to the consumer, the regular consumer, at the end. So unless Pakistan can bring the cost of its coal down to let's say 1/4 of what it is today, and at the same time invest in carbon capture and storage technologies, which in itself is a very controversial technology, and it is very costly too, it might not be the best course of action to explore these technologies as an alternate to coal. Instead, I think renewable energy and like green hydrogen and battery storage, it's, as Simon mentioned earlier, I think these are the solutions that the government should be looking towards and investing in, rather than moving towards obsolete technologies. That's all I have to say for now, and I'm available for questions later. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Haneea. I think very useful intervention, and also considering and giving us a perspective in terms of degradation of water induced by these technologies and other environmental hazards associated with it, and also highlighting the costs and the economic feasibility, the economic challenge related to these interventions. And I think we will have some more questions related to this in the second round, but I would just like to go on to the last speaker we have, and he has just joined us now, Mr. Shamsuddin Sheikh. He's a CEO of Natural Resource Management. He's a former CEO of Sindh Anglo Coal Mining Company. He's been pioneer in, I would say, initiating this the Thar Coal project in Block 2, and also has a deep understanding of the background, the evolution, and the prospects related to the development of Thar Coal field. So over to you, sir.
Thank you, Haneea. Thank you very much for inviting me for this seminar. I can just briefly talk about my own experience at Thar, and now tell you about something that inspired from working at Thar. What am I doing right now? So just to start with, just tell you something what I'm doing right now. So I worked at Thar from 2012 as the chief executive of Angro Energy and Sindh Anglo Coal Mining Company and Thar Foundation. That was my start, and I left Angro in 2018, and 2018 when the project had reached almost 95% completion, because deep in my heart, I wanted to do one more project, and that project is the famous Recotech project in Balochistan. which is similar in many ways in terms of sustainability, in terms of project dynamics. Obviously, in Thar we were doing coal, and over here is copper and gold, two very different mining techniques and stuff like that. But end of the day, people, sustainability, environment, everything remains the same. So these days, from last 2 years, I'm working, and inshallah, Allah ne chaha to we will be able to take care of this project as well as what we did at Thar. So talking about Thar, in 2012, when I was asked to head this project, I reached Thar it was in June 2012. I went to Thar for the very first time, and an incident happened that really, in a way, changed my life, my way of thinking and stuff like that. It changed, and I was at Thar visiting mine site with my colleagues, and I asked them to take me to the mine site so that I could see what was happening over there and where we have to dig and what we have to do. And to tell you a little bit, I was no miner. I did not know much about mining. But anyway, I thought we have to dig and whatever needs to be done, so I must go and see. And when we reached the site where we were supposed to do the digging, some people from the nearby village, which was really next to that digging point, almost where we were supposed to dig, some people came from there and started asking questions. They asked a question, what we are going to do, how we are going to dig, and what would happen to them. And we told them that one of my colleagues who was standing there, he was answering their questions. It was a Maghrib time. The guy was answering questions that we will give you a new village, we'll make a new village, we'll do this for you, and we'll do that for you, and we'll bring lots of economic benefits. And the old man said to him that it's fine that you guys are going to do all these things for us, but what will happen to the graves of our elders, which have been buried for last 300-400 years? We have been here for such a long time. How you are going to ask us to leave these places? What will happen? And I started talking to that guy. Being native of that area, I could speak to that person in the native language Sindhi over there. And the guy, after talking to me for next few minutes, just 3-4 minutes, just held my hands and said that, and I like to say that in Sindhi the way he said it, that tu tasan jo penjo ain, tu jeko faislo kande asan acceptable hondo. Basically meaning that you are our own, and whatever you will decide, whether you will take us to some other place or bury us in this big trench that you are going to do, you can decide whatever and we'll accept. Just 2 minutes and 3 minutes talking to these guys, that shows the innocence of these people who live in these type of villages, these type of places. And the owners of any development or developer is that they must take care of these people. So when we came back from there, we said, who is the owner of that place? Is it us who have got the license to that area? Government has given us a license and we can go, and they have told us to, sort of move people around, or the owners are these guys who are sitting on this treasure. And I thought in my heart, and then when we started going through good documentation on the projects and stuff like that, or mining projects, one of the very, very important part of the project is that you should have a social license working in that area. So social license, unfortunately, in a country like ours, is not something that you obtain from the locals of the area. You just get approval from EPAs and CPAs and PPAs and whatever of this world, who get you these certificates without any real research done or any permission taken. And we said, no, we must go and get the social license from the people so that we could work over here. And we started in earnest. When people used to tell me that you are working on coal, which is not environmentally friendly, there is a certain truth to it. I cannot deny that coal is all good and no wrong will take place. But am I doing something? So am I using the best of the technology? Am I trying to safeguard these people, trying to place them in better houses? Am I trying to have a good schooling, hospitals, employment opportunities for these guys? So whether I try and not try, at least onus is on the project company to ensure that we use the best of the technology to mitigate as much as possible, as much of the environmental issues that are possible, take care of water for these people, and also at the same time try and help them out socially. And so we tried to make our third project as a model project. So now, Alhamdulillah, after 6-7 years of working there, we formed Thar Foundation, first of its type organization this was half owned by government, half owned by us as SECMC, and managed by us. We put up so many schools. We put biosaline agriculture, and I must say my friendship with Haneea also is Thar related, because she was studying in China and she came there to study social impact of Thar, and she has been involved in Thar for quite some time. Over there, our friendship started, and she suggested few things, and I went to meet her professors in China to talk about biosaline agriculture. Then we had to take water out of the coal fields, and we put that in a huge pond, and we started fishing. A place like Thar, fishing unheard of. And we did that. We put schools, we put colleges. Then the question was that, we must employ son of the soil, and then somebody said daughter of the soil. And to cut long story short, today 54 women, 30 women are driving those huge dump trucks. So in a way, this is a model project which has got both, obviously, we have done the best of the technology, best of the mining practices we have adopted over there. If somebody goes and sees over there, then it's a beautiful project to see. Environmentally, it's friendlier, not 100% harmless. No project. Even if you talk about coal project, obviously it's not harmless. So there are harms, long-term issues. But whatever could be mitigated under the circumstances has been done. But a huge social part of the project is there, which is so people lives have improved. If you go to Islamkot and Midki, those places, the big towns around it, you would definitely see a completely different Islamkot, which is just like 25 kilometers from there. When we used to go there, there was no bank, no gas stations. Now there are 12 online banks. At least 2 years back when I left that place, there were 12 online banks. So lots of money has flown in, lots of guest houses. We never used to have a place to eat. Now restaurants and stuff like that. So many things, and people have really gained a whole lot benefit. So the project has done well. Moving forward, we did a project. Now there are a number of other projects. We did 660 megawatts. Now there are projects worth 2,000 megawatts that are coming up. And this coal to liquid and coal to gas is something that we should really put in lots of effort to make it happen, because Pakistan imports lots of gas. Pakistan would require gas. So coal to gas is very, very important. Coal to liquid is also very important. And lignite is especially suitable for such things. Only thing is that it is expensive, and the thing that has to be done is to mass produce coal. Instead of 4 or 5 million tons that is being produced right now, we have to take the level to about 20 million tons, so that per unit price goes down. And if the per unit price goes down, then these technologies, coal to liquid, CTL and others, would start becoming more and more beneficial, because as you know that Pakistan's gas is fast depleting, and it is really very essential that we have other sources for gas. Importing gas means that we are importing fertilizer, which is very, very important for our food security. And either we import fertilizer or we import gas. If we import gas and make fertilizer, then it becomes prohibitively very expensive. If we start importing urea, means that our food security is in the hand of somebody else. So we must put in all the effort to gasify Thar reserves. And if we can do it at a cheaper price, as a competitive price, I think that would be very nice. At the same time, we must ensure the environmental things, all the things over there, because these technologies also are slightly better, because these are gasification. This is not direct burning of coal, so these are slightly better, but still environment and water and all those things have to be taken care of. But Thar is our future. We must work hard, but at the same time, do not forget environment and the people around it. Take both the things together. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. And I think thank you so much for highlighting the wonderful and the remarkable steps that were taken in Block 2 under your leadership, especially the biosaline agriculture, the fish related to fisheries, improving the livelihoods of the local communities, and also highlighting the issues related with the land resettlement, relocation, and the model villages. And I think that is something that you have done beyond the CSR limits. And I think that can actually act as a role model for the other development priorities and the infrastructure as well. And that is where the question remains that if even the block next to you or the other development projects would be having the same kind of framework and the same kind of priorities to mitigate these environmental issues related to the development of the coal field. With this, and I think before moving on to the next round, we have a documentary that we have produced out of our research based on our research work on secondary resources as well as on our primary data, where we actually went to the field and had some analysis, some questions from the interviews from all these stakeholders, and that we have compiled a kind of perception, a kind of a qualitative perspective based on our findings and the studies that we would like to highlight through this documentary. And then we'll move on to the next round. So Ahad, if you could please
The energy sector of Pakistan is marked with major inefficiencies, financial risks, and misaligned policies. Hence, there is a need to identify the critical factors and how our current policies and international agreements can shape up the future energy and environmental outlook of the country.
Pakistan remains one of the top most vulnerable country of climate change impacts.
We need to see COVID-19 as an opportunity to bring back the SDGs on track in a timely, efficient manner. We are constrained on resources, and climate-related SDGs are, of course, certainly off track. But this is the time to rethink our production processes and really build systems and processes so that we don't go back to business as usual.
Despite nationally determined contribution objectives, climate concerns, and risk of long-term financial locking due to thermal energy resources, the coal capacity of Pakistan has significantly increased over the years. This will most certainly put the country off track to meet its climate goals.
Green CPEC should be seen as an initiative where countries such as Pakistan can get to see a lot of knowledge and technology transfer. And of course, when this is embedded in current knowledge systems, it goes a long way in not just helping the public sector, but also the private sector to develop a shared understanding around green and clean energy over the longer term.
Pakistan has ample physical resource potential of wind and solar. Only a fraction of total power is being generated from renewables. Most important for green CPEC, the share of fossil fuel financing has been decreasing, while the amount invested in renewable energies, particularly hydropower, has been increasing.
Considering these potential impacts, greening CPEC seems to be a good way of mobilizing finances by focusing on accelerating investments in green and innovative infrastructure, also in renewable energy, transport, nature-based solutions, agriculture, trade, and so on.
It'll be timely to see that the fiscal policy or our investment-oriented promotion schemes which we have for the energy sector, they should be certain for our investors in the energy sector, so that private enterprise or even those involved in public-private partnerships get to have a certain policy environment in this sector. And of course, investments in green and clean energy require longer-term certainty of policies, which can only come around if fiscal policy does not see frequent changes.
Diversification of financial resources, along with awareness and capacity building in financial institutions, can ensure the availability of green finance and green stimulus. If this is to become a broader trend for Chinese overseas investments, we would need clear and stringent policy guidelines from both China and Pakistan. It would pave the way for clean energy transition in Pakistan.
Thank you, Ahad. And I think it was useful for the audience to kind of have a overview of the research that we are doing towards clean energy transition in Pakistan. And I think the second round would like to more focus on a way forward approach. We would like to seek insights from all of you on how to pave a way forward, what kind of, based on all the perspectives that we have heard from both coal and the other front, we would like to have your opinion on identifying the key steps to support the government towards this clean energy transition of Pakistan. And also considering an aspect of just transition. Just like in the context of third coal development, we have witnessed a huge number of economic opportunities being produced for the regional development. And if we are considering, as per the Prime Minister's announcement on phasing down of coal and looking into the other technologies and other alternative options, how do we foresee a just transition happening in terms of creating the employment opportunities, in terms of boosting up green growth, green jobs, and all. So with this, I would like to again begin with Ms. Amina from Right Factor. If she could shed light on how do you see the steps that should be implemented to achieve it?
Yeah, thanks, Hina. So basically, I also recently visited the Tharkol site, and I was, like I mentioned in my comments, I was completely blown over by the development. And there is definitely, like what Shams mentioned, a lot of, we witnessed, and this is myself, like, so we're not directly related to SCCMC, so I'm not promoting it. But the thing is that what was visible is there's a lot of female employment and local employment, which is very heartening to see. So going forward, I think we just need to have a more holistic sort of discussion on a lot of impacts. Yes, and there'll always be a dilemma because the cost of coal will only significantly reduce the more it is mined. But then again, the mining process requires a lot of transportation, etc., fuel consumption. So there'll always be a question as far as the government is concerned on the emission levels. Perhaps if we are decide to continue with coal technologies, then we do need to focus on carbon sequestration and tree plantation, for example. So that is important. Another question of mine is, or some point to consider, is that China is under a lot of international pressure as far as financing and development of coal-based technologies is concerned. So is the State Bank of Pakistan considering offering any policies to perhaps local financiers or incentives? Should we continue to develop projects related to coal? And again, water. These three are very, very critical topics that will, once if we sort of holistically decide on the way forward, that would really help in successful project development.
Thank you, Amina. And I think moving on, I would like to request Faisal from BPIB to identify some next steps for the government or some recommendations that we could put forward, and especially in relevance to what you talked about, overcoming the reliance on imported fuel and the cost competitiveness of the electricity and the power being produced through coal. And also adding in the costs related to the socioeconomic side and also the environmental costs.
Thank you. I think we have a very useful discussion covering the environment side, the power generation side, as well as the socioeconomic side. The way forward, I think the way forward is obviously to focus on indigenous and clean energy resources. There's no other way to get the affordability and sustainability in energy sector. We have to move away from the imported fuel in the first step, and then obviously in the second step, we have to increase the share of clean and renewable energy sources. But as I discussed earlier in my remarks, that this share of clean and green energy should be based on certain studies. This should not be just like a number, but that should be based on some integrated energy planning, as the least cost generation plan being prepared by NTDC. So the focus is on thermal, the hydro, and wind and solar. And then obviously we have to improve the transmission infrastructure as well to accommodate, to integrate the high share of renewable energy sources, because the current system is not capable enough to digest, to absorb the largest share of wind and solar, keeping in view the intermittency and variability issues. And secondly, the renewable energy sources have particularly issues with the intermittencies. Also, they need some backup supply. Like in the previous draft of IGCEP, they pointed out 26 gigawatt of open cycle gas turbines. So when we put 26 gigawatt open cycle gas turbines and we include its cost, then that cost should be compared with the coal or other indigenous fossil fuels. And finally, as we are moving towards competitive markets, the CTBCM is on way. We are expecting to achieve its operation by the April or May next year. So with the market in place, there will be more competition between the investors and on the supply side as well. So obviously, we will have more competitive options, whether it's based on renewable, whether it's based on coal. But the final remarks from my side will be that we need to set objectives of energy security, affordability, and sustainability, and then we should try to achieve those objectives based on certain energy mix, including coal, including renewable wind and solar. So that should be the approach, and that approach, the first step towards it is the planning. So planning is most important, and the NTDC is already in process to prepare integrated generation capacity expansion plan. So I think with the finalization of that plan, we will be in better position to have a share of different energy sources and optimization of these sources based on their economic viability. So that's all from my side. And further, I think the cost of the thermal coal field and the price tariff of power generation being generated by Thar coal field will reduce with the passage of time as the more mines will be developed, and hopefully the economy of scale will be achieved, and we'll have a lower tariff in future as compared to the current tariff. That will also result in reducing the basket price for electricity. So that will be that should be the ultimate objectives. And I think the government already have working very seriously on it, and PPIB and ADB, all the implementing agencies are implementing government agencies, which has strong focus on indigenous and renewable and clean energy, besides the enhancement of transmission and distribution infrastructures. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Faisal. I think I would like to ask Mr. Ali from PPIB as well. Just like Faisal has mentioned about the reducing the costs of the power generation and the electricity tariffs for the end consumers, I would like you to highlight some of your thoughts on the energy access side, at the large construction of these new coal power plants is, of course, to improve the better access and to improve the making sure that it reaches to all the people with enough access and the country's energy capacity and the need. But the recent data still identifies about 50 million people in Pakistan who still needs it. So where do you think the challenge lies in terms of that, and how do we see Pakistan overcoming that challenge in the future?
Thank you, Ms. Hina. I would like to just add Mr. Faisal Bhattu. Comparison of the costs provided by the government of Sindh, I would like to quote here for the record purpose. For example, if we consider LNG, the cost of LNG is around $11 per million BTU. These are the numbers shared by the government of Sindh recently. Again, if we consider TAPI gas, then that is $9.5 per million BTU. New discoveries, it costs around $7.5 per million BTU. If we consider naphtha, then it is much higher, that is $14 per million BTU. And even we consider imported coal, the cost of imported coal is around $5 per million BTU. Once we expand our coal mines in Thar, then our local coal cost would be around $2.5 per million BTU. So that is the ideal scenario for us in the future, that we may devise our base load power plants based on the local coal. So this is the unaffordable option, that if we neglect local coal, then for the development and sustainable development of the Pakistan, we need to rely on the Thar coal, because it is the future of Pakistan. If we neglect it, definitely we need baseload power plants. And for baseload power plants, if we rely on the liquid fuel or imported fuel, that is much costlier, even 4 times, and rather more than 4 or 5 times higher in the cost value. And on the other hand, our foreign exchange would be drained out. So for the sustainable development, I would suggest that we must rely on the local coal, with the options that we may develop latest technology, coal power plants, and while taking care of the environmental hazards and CSR and 1 billion tsunami trees arrangement. For this purpose, the developing coal IPPs are very much focused on this arena, and they are considering. So hopefully in future we will develop supercritical technology based on local coal, and while taking care of the environmental hazards of the coal. Thank you. In case any other question, I'm available.
Thank you so much, Ali. I think moving on, I would like to invite Mr. Simon Nicholas, who has raised this concern on the base load capacity. and the government's narrative of having intermittencies issues. So how, Simon, how do you think that the government should be able to see it from your perspective? And how do you see we could cover for these unreliable, intermittent electricity sources and the issues being narrated by the government? What could be the way forward for Pakistan?
So we need to think about this in the context of the fact that there is a serious financial crisis in Pakistan's power system. The capacity payments going up, circular debt is hopelessly unsustainable, and we're heading for higher tariffs if we keep going in this direction. And more coal-fired power means more capacity payments, and that's making things worse, not better. So Pakistan needs to focus, forgetting carbon emissions for the moment and the other environmental impacts of coal. Pakistan needs to focus on lowest cost power generation in order to bring down the average cost of power generation and limit the need for tariff increases. If tariff increases go up as much as it's suggested they have to, I don't see how that's going to be very just, because that's going to be very high tariffs for consumers. It's going to be high tariffs for businesses. Those businesses will not be able to support jobs. And that is would be a very unfortunate outcome for the Pakistan economy and not very just for the people of Pakistan. So lowest cost power generation in Pakistan already means wind and solar. They are reliable, but they are intermittent. So they do need to be backed up. And Pakistan has a number of options. It already has hydro plants, which could be used to back up the intermittency of renewables. It has gas-fired power plants, which could be used as converted to peaking power plants to back up the intermittency of renewables. And that would also, if Pakistan was in a situation where it had a very high level of renewables providing most of the power, backed up by things like gas, those gas peaking plants would be using less gas than they would be if they were being operated as baseload plants, which is probably an important consideration given that domestic gas reserves are declining. And then in the future, as we're already seeing around the world, battery technology is just getting cheaper and cheaper. And that will eventually, and in some places it's already doing so, like the US and Australia, it's already outcompeting gas-fired peaking plants. And the good news is that China is a world leader in batteries. It's a world leader in securing the supply of the minerals like lithium and cobalt you need to make batteries. So if CPEC can be transitioned to be towards more of a green CPEC, then Pakistan will be in a good position to make good use of that ever cheaper Chinese technology.
Thank you, Simon. We have another question that is actually from Ms. Amina, here from Ms. Sabina from SPP, in terms of any financing incentives being offered for these technological and so the initiatives being proposed by the government on CTG and C2L, etc. Let's suppose to the local banks that China is under a lot of international pressure to hold the financing of coal-related technology.
Ma'am, I think Ms. Sabina had to leave, so we will forward the question to her, and we'll respond to Ms. Amina as soon as we hear back from her.
Sure, no problem. So I think, considering that we also have questions coming through the audience, I would like to ask Mr. Imran Sabir from SEPA on the tools that are used for the socioeconomic analysis of the projects, how it has been quantified, and how would you ensure the compliance to the standards that I had also mentioned earlier. So basically, what tools and methods do you identify on a priority list to be able to ensure a better monitoring of these socioeconomic parameters and indicators. Are you with us, Mr. Imran? Probably, if I could, okay, Mr. Shamsuddin Sheikh has probably left as well, who has been part of this project. He could identify the mitigation measures. But probably we can ask the question to Mr. Yasir Khokhar, who is with us from Public-Private Partnership Unit, Sindh.
Haneea, before I come to this question, I think I would second what Simon said. We were discussing about the way forward, right? So we are in a situation where we have this electricity tariff quite high. The circular debt is not under control and it's going to go up. And if it goes up, that will reflect on the tariff and the tariff will be higher again. So we are in this cycle where we see the electricity price going up. So the focus for now should not be the sustainable energy. The focus should be cheaper energy in the first place, right? So we need to focus on the cheaper energy when we can bring the energy price down, because that is going to drive the industry and the country for now. Now the savings that you attain from this cheaper source can partially be utilized to offset the environmental impact that we have right now. I feel so strongly about this third coal project because I've seen the pace of development that I've taken over there, which otherwise was not possible. So we have an indigenous source, which is 1/4 cheaper as compared to the imported fuels that we use for the power generation. And we focus on environmental impact as well, provided if you are able to generate enough savings from that energy mix. Having expensive energy, we talk about that we have excess capacity in the system right now. That excess capacity is there for the fact, but the most important factor is that the energy is too expensive for people to consume. So that's why that excess capacity exists. Should this be brought down, you would see a significant surge in demand. People are reluctant to use. Industries are reluctant to use. They're not putting up new industries just because the energy is too expensive. And we have a source which can bring this cost down. Our priority number one needs to be that we need to bring this energy price down through local, sustainable, affordable source for power generation, which I think is definitely third. And a partial of the savings could be offset using that for environmental concerns. Another comment that I would like to make, is that, like Ms. Haneea Isaad mentioned, that there are a lot of issues, socio-economic issues in Thar when we're putting up these power plants. For example, we are doing one project, that's a water conveyance project that we are doing. And through this project, we are actually providing water to 5-6 connecting villages, which were solely dependent on rainwater. So yes, the project takes care of these things. Like you mentioned, the SEPA report, they consider these factors. We had hearings with the locals in terms of SEPA where we had their concern addressed. Our regional design was touching one of the villages, but then they had to move that design from the village. And we had to provide that ample space for the locals to produce whatever they were producing over there in terms of agriculture. So the design was based on the basis of the local people's wills and decisions. And in the SEPA hearing, we already had a lot of arguments with the locals, like what are their concerns? They wanted local employment, local people to be employed. Now we are employing more than 200 people from those villages. So these 200 people are actually 200 households who will be getting this this income for the next 25 years. Their second concern was water. And they were concerned about the water because they're mostly fed on rent. So we are providing them dedicated wells, which will be connected through the reservoirs that will be supplying water to the IPPs. So we are taking care of their water needs, we are taking care of their revenue needs, we are taking care of their other social factors, like we are providing them connectivity. The power plant, the generators that will be generating this filtration system will also be supplying energy, electricity to the locals. So employment, social security, all these things were taken care of when we're doing the SEPA report over there. So again, my point is very simple. We need to bring the fuel price down. It needs to be sustainable. You need to make the energy more affordable for people who are actually utilizing that. And the focus should be more on bringing the price down rather than being considered about the social environmental concerns. Not to say that we should not be concerned about the environmental concern, but we can provide some savings from bringing the energy down and offsetting its impact on the environmental side. Thank you.
Thank you, Yasir, for these wonderful interventions, especially with regards to the environmental issues that we were discussing. I'll just quickly move on to Haneea before we close down for her final comments. Haneea, are you with us?
Yes, just a second. I think there's a lot of background noise, so just give me a second. All right. Yeah, thank you, Dr. Haneea. And I really like that you framed your question in the beginning about how we can make all of this a just transition. And when we're talking about a just transition, I think it's important to note that the voices of the locals should be brought to the forefront and they should be empowered as well. And I'm glad that Mr. Yasir and his team is trying to sort of improve the quality of life of these people in Thar. But I think there are still some discrepancies that remain when we're looking at the on-ground situation. Maybe these project developers are trying, but these are not uniform changes that are being brought to the region. So my point over here is that I think there needs to be a proper resettlement policy, a proper compensation policy for these locals, which is uniform throughout the Thar region, and not just when we talk, not just the Thar region. Even when it comes to renewable energy projects, the transition should be just. The voices of the locals should be heard. Their concerns should be addressed. So proper consultations need to be carried out with them, and then a uniform resettlement and compensation policy needs to be drawn up for the locals for both coal power for energy projects period in the country, whether it be renewable energy projects or coal or coal projects. Yeah, so I guess those would be my concluding thoughts. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Haneea, and thank you for highlighting the aspects from the just transition, not only when we are transitioned, when we are talking about the coal projects, but also the renewable energy projects, and also the footprints associated and the land resettlement, relocation problems associated with all kind of infrastructure projects that we need to look into. So I think through this discussion, I would just like to give a brief summarized overview of what we had discussed through this public dialogue. And I think it has been quite interactive and quite comprehensive, covering all kind of aspects, ranging from coal being perceived as the most economical and viable solution for Pakistan's Pakistan's economy, and also we have heard about the socioeconomic uplift that have been happening, and also some other issues that were highlighted by our experts in this forum. What we have found out as well is about the energy security, sustainability, And also the transition to low carbon economy is challenging in developing countries like Pakistan, where the economic issues need to have a balance. So there is a trade-off. And also, instead of, according to the experts, instead of following the renewable energy transition, just like that trade policy, there should be proper analytical work to be done to identify the work, like to overcome the reliance on the coal and the dependence on the coal, and integrated energy planning and the least cost generation planning should be done in a most effective and most practical way. The other aspect we had discussed about C2G and C2L, which are under the government plans, that is highlighted not to be environmentally and economically feasible for Pakistan, according to the research done by Mr. Simon and Haneea, as highlighted. But again, considering the government's priority towards it, it's really important to highlight these and raise these issues, these findings to them, and come up with some concrete solutions to support the government through this transition, or through these plans, to identify and overcome the major challenges that could be coming in terms of financing and the economic situation of Pakistan. So this comes to a conclusion. We are finishing up 10 minutes earlier. It's because we think that some of the panelists have left due to the Friday prayer already, and our audience would be willing to take their time as well. So I would just like to wind this up with these comments. We shall be sending you a feedback form along with the report, a summarized report of this public-private dialogue. And we would like to have this interaction continued for the longer term, and have your engagement with us for the next process through the networks we have formulated. It's called Clean Energy Transition Network, through which we are trying to engage all the stakeholders through these forums. And we would like to have all your contributions and your insights and your valuable work that could complement and support this transition, covering all the aspects and all the related issues that we need to have them framed in this way forward. So with this, I would like to thank you to all the panelists, all the audience who have attended this public-private dialogue today on this very important topic on Thar coal development. And I look forward to engaging you for future events. We will be launching this report on a case study on Thar coal development next month, preferably 3rd week of June. And we hope that we can invite you all to the forum and have your have more of your perspectives and more of your contributions coming towards us to improvise. So thank you so much for joining. Take care. Have a good weekend. Just a last video message from our Executive Director, Dr. Abid Suleri, on the Clean Energy Transition Network of Pakistan. Thank you so much. And Allah Hafiz.
Transition to clean energy requires collective efforts of government, of academia, of think tanks, and of individual citizens. And in order to promote this collectivity, and in order to promote this collaboration, Sustainable Development Policy Institute has initiated a network called Clean Energy Transition Network. If you are interested in promoting clean energy, if you are interested in supporting this transition towards clean energy, then please join us. We have 3 subgroups. The first group is Renewable Energy Working Group. The second subgroup is Corporate Sustainability Group. And the third subgroup is Natural Capital Impact Network. I look forward to seek your support, and I look forward to work in collaboration with you.